Have you ever witnessed a moment that could change everything? Get away from my daughter, you dirty black, sir, she was lost, I just said, get your filthy hands off her. Alexander Kensington, billionaire media mogul, stormed forward. In one swift motion, he yanked the child away and shoved Maya hard in the chest. She stumbled, landing on the hot asphalt. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone gasped. Someone else started filming. You people always pretending to be heroes. You think snatching a white child makes you noble? Stay in your damn place. He spat, voice trembling with fury. Ella, the 6-year-old girl at the center of the chaos, clung to her teddy bear, confused and terrified. Her tear-filled eyes darted between Maya, still on the ground, and her father, now towering over them with clenched fists and eyes full of fire. But just 16 hours earlier, things had been different. It was close to sunset when Maya left her cleaning shift at the Cartwright residence. She was tired, her knees sore, her shirt damp with sweat. As she passed the back entrance of the supermarket, she noticed a small figure crouched beside a dumpster. At first, she thought it was a stray cat. Then she heard the sniffles. A little girl alone. Her face flushed, dress wrinkled, shoes missing. She clutched a bear like it was all she had left in the world. Sweetheart, Maya approached gently. Where's your mama? Your daddy? The girl shook her head. They're gone. I woke up and I was alone. Maya's heart twisted. She looked around. No one in sight. I'm taking you somewhere safe, baby. That somewhere turned out to be Maya's modest apartment in West End, a weathered but clean space where she lived with her teenage grandson, Jalan. She fed the girl a warm bowl of chicken noodle soup, gave her a bath, and let her wear one of Jalan's old t-shirts to sleep in. She found out the girl's name was Ella. You're not scared of me? Maya had asked softly that night, tucking her in. Ella shook her head. You smell like pancakes. Are you ready for a twist that will shock you? The next morning, Maya held Ella's hand as they walked toward the supermarket, hoping someone, anyone, had reported her missing. She didn't trust the police to care enough, but she had to try. That's when the black SUV screeched to a halt. Alexander Kensington exploded from the vehicle like a force of nature. He didn't ask, didn't pause, just saw a black woman holding his daughter and assumed the worst. Get away from my daughter, you dirty black. The words weren't just racist. They were radioactive. Maya tried to speak, tried to explain, but he wasn't listening. His fury boiled over. He ripped Ella away and shoved Maya so violently she hit the pavement, her elbow scraping the ground, her purse scattering. Jalan's photo flew out and landed face up beside her. Do you want me to call the cops on you? He bellowed. You'll rot in jail for this. People like you always want something, money, fame. You don't belong near my family. Maya didn't cry. She stood up slowly, brushing gravel from her palms, and looked him dead in the eyes. I didn't ask for anything, she said. But your little girl asked for love. Alexander froze. Something in his chest cracked, but pride buried it. He turned, barked at his security team, and left without another word. Later that night, in the safety of his mansion, Alexander watched the footage taken by bystanders. He saw Maya bend to shield Ella from the sun. He saw her body language, not one of a criminal, but of a protector. He saw Ella resist leaving Maya, pulling back, whispering, I want to stay. He remembered the bruises on Ella's arms from when she'd run off weeks ago. The way she cried in her sleep. The way Veronica, his fiancée, had insisted on private discipline schools he didn't know much about. He remembered how cold Ella was with her. How she warmed instantly to this woman, a stranger. Was she really a stranger? He poured himself a drink and sat in the dark, guilt rolling over him like waves. For the first time in years, he whispered a quiet truth. I was wrong. Across town, Maya iced her elbow in silence. Jalan sat next to her, angry and confused. They can say anything, do anything to us, and it's fine, he muttered. Maya nodded. But we still choose who we are. No one can take that. Jalan didn't answer. But later, when Maya fell asleep on the couch, he tucked the blanket around her. On the table beside her rested Ella's drawing, a stick figure woman in a yellow dress, holding hands with a little girl and a bear. Above it, in crayon, my hero, and across the city, a powerful man lay awake in his $1,000,000 bed, haunted not by what Maya had done, but by what he had. The bruise on Maya's elbow had darkened overnight. But that wasn't the pain she carried. Morning light crept through the blinds of her modest apartment in West End, dancing across the photo of her late husband and the worn Bible on the coffee table. Jalen had already left for school, and the silence in the apartment clung to Maya's spirit like dust. She sat at the kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, eyes locked on Ella's crayon drawing from the night before. My hero, it read in shaky, innocent handwriting. A lump formed in her throat. She was no hero, just a tired old maid who tried to do the right thing in a world that didn't seem to care. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. She hesitated, then picked up. Hello. A cold, clipped voice answered. This is Veronica Lang. I'm Mr. Kensington's fiancé. Maya tensed. I suggest you stop seeking attention and refrain from contacting or approaching the Kensington family again. There are legal ramifications if you continue to insert yourself. I didn't contact anyone, Maya replied, her voice low. Good. Keep it that way. The line went dead. Maya stood still for a long moment, the receiver still pressed to her ear. Then she took a deep breath and exhaled through her nose. Something wasn't right. That woman sounded more like a threat than a guardian. Later that day, Maya received an envelope under her door. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a printed article draft anonymous exposé. It described a child found wandering alone in a hot parking lot. It praised a good Samaritan, a black woman with no criminal record who had done what any mother would do. It asked the question, why was her kindness punished? Handwritten at the bottom, you don't know me, but I believe you. Don't let them erase the truth. Maya's hand trembled slightly. Her eyes scanned the street through the window. No one unusual. Just an old man walking his dog. A teenage boy on a bike. A tired nurse heading home. But someone was watching, and someone was listening. That evening, she sat at the church community hall for her weekly volunteer shift. People were polite, but the air felt different. Mrs. Jenkins, who used to hug Maya tightly, now just nodded from a distance. Reverend Cooper gave her a soft smile, but there was concern in his eyes. I saw the video, Maya, he said after service. You all right? I'm still standing, she answered with a wry smile, but the ground's shaking. He squeezed her hand. The truth has a way of surviving. But outside the church, Maya's car had been vandalized. Someone had keyed the word kidnapper into the driver's door. Her breath caught. She didn't call the police. She knew better. Meanwhile, in a mansion far across town, Alexander Kensington paced the edge of his private study, the marble floor beneath his feet. The footage played on his screen again. Maya reaching out, shielding Ella from the sun, Ella clinging to her, crying when she was pulled away. He'd watched it 20 times now. Each time, the shame pressed deeper. Veronica entered without knocking. You called the lawyers? Yes, Alexander said quietly. She needs to stay away. We can't have any more press. He turned to face her. Did you leave Ella in that parking lot? Veronica didn't blink. I was shopping. She was asleep in the car. I wasn't gone long. She was sunburned, crying. She said she woke up alone. It was a mistake. Don't let one misstep ruin us. Us? His voice sharpened. Or you? She moved toward him, voice dropping. Alexander, this isn't about guilt. It's about power. We don't bend to people like her. He stared at her, suddenly seeing something in her he hadn't seen before. He remembered how she had talked about Maya after the incident. That maid should be grateful she didn't get shot. He hadn't flinched then. Now he did. That night, Jalen found Maya sitting on the porch steps staring at the moon. "You okay, Grandma?" She nodded, just thinking. They keyed the car. "You going to tell someone?" "What's the point? People already decided what I am." Jalen sat beside her. "You're the reason that little girl isn't dead in a hot car. That's who you are." Maya smiled faintly. "Maybe that's enough. Maybe not." Jalen looked at her. "Serious now. I want to help. Let me do some digging. I'm good at computers. I could find something on them. On that woman, Veronica." Maya looked at him. Her baby boy, 17, but sharp, full of fire. "Not yet," she said. "Truth's a heavy thing. We carry it, not throw it." The next morning, a knock at Maya's door startled her. She opened it cautiously. Alexander Kensington stood there. No cameras, no security, no arrogance. He looked smaller somehow, less composed, more human. "Miss Williams," he said. "I came to apologize." Maya stared at him, speechless. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I watched the footage. Read the reports. I was wrong. I treated you like you were beneath me, and that wasn't just cruel, it was racist. I'm sorry." Maya folded her arms. "Why now?" "Because my daughter hasn't smiled since that day. And the only time she did was when she drew a picture of you." Maya's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "One apology doesn't undo what you did." I know, but it's a start." She looked at him for a long moment, then said, "You want to fix this? Find out what your fiancé is hiding and stop looking at people like me like we don't matter." Alexander nodded slowly. "You have my word." As he turned to leave, she called out, "Mr. Kensington." He stopped. "Next time you push a woman down and call her dirty, ask yourself if that's the man you want your daughter to become proud of." He didn't reply, just nodded again and walked into the rising sun. And Maya, bruised but unbroken, stood a little taller on her porch. Because sometimes justice doesn't shout, it waits, and when it comes, it speaks loud enough for everyone to hear. Alexander Kensington sat alone in his study. The morning light filtered through the high windows like judgment. For the first time in years, he didn't feel in control. The apology had shaken him more than he expected. Not because he was afraid of Maya Williams, but because for once, he wasn't sure if he was the good guy in the story anymore. He reached for his phone and scrolled through the names until he found her, Veronica Lang. She was supposed to be his partner, his future wife, the polished face of his empire. But lately, the shine had dulled, and underneath it, he was beginning to see something far colder. He hit play on the security footage he'd ordered from his private investigator. There she was, walking out of the department store that day, not 10 minutes after she'd left Ella in the car, carrying 2 bags, smiling into her phone. No panic, no rush. It wasn't just a mistake. It was negligence. Worse, it was indifference. Alexander closed the video and leaned back, rubbing his face. The world had always forgiven Veronica's sharpness, called it ambition. But this was different. Meanwhile, across town, Maya was organizing canned goods at the church pantry. She moved with quiet focus, but her thoughts kept circling back to Alexander's visit. He'd apologized, yes, but apologies came easy to rich men when reputation was on the line. Still, something in his voice had felt real. Something in his eyes, regret, maybe. Or was it just another act? Reverend Cooper entered, carrying 2 boxes of toiletries. "I heard Kensington himself showed up at your door." Maya sighed. "He did. Wants to be the hero now, does he?" "I don't need a hero," she said. "I need the truth." Truncated 74,166 characters, bored, and planning every detail of what came next. Then, under the bright lights of a local television station, Maya sat across from investigative journalist Carla Eubanks. It was a special broadcast advertised for days. Tonight, Carla said into the camera, we speak with Maya Williams about the attacks on her foundation and the forces behind them. Maya didn't flinch. She laid out the evidence, the shell donations, the propaganda blogs, the connections to hate groups, the silence from Kendall Enterprises. Carla asked, "Why risk everything by going public?" Maya answered calmly, "Because silence is what lets rot grow. I will not allow anyone to rot the hope these kids have earned." The backlash was immediate and mixed. The blog that first posted the leaks went dark overnight. Kendall Enterprises issued a vague denial. Some called Maya brave. Others called her a liar. But the center held literally. More volunteers signed up. Donations surged. Local leaders voiced support. At a candlelight vigil held outside the center, Maya stood beside families holding lanterns and signs that read, "We believe in Maya, and truth is a fire that cannot be put out." Later that night, alone in her office, Maya looked through the window at the quiet street beyond. Jelen entered quietly. "The kids are asking if you'll read to them again tomorrow." Maya chuckled. "Of course, if the world's going to fall apart, we may as well do it with good stories." He walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You tired?" She leaned back into him. "Tired?" "Yes." "Done." "Never." He kissed her shoulder. "That's the Maya I know." She looked out once more and whispered, "This city will learn, even if it fights every step of the way." And somewhere in a boardroom across the city, Bryce Kendall smashed a glass against a wall. Rage thick in his throat as he realized the woman he tried to erase had instead become the symbol of everything he feared. Truth, resilience, and a justice that couldn't be bought or buried. The morning broke with the sharp cry of sirens in the distance and the distant thud of news helicopters circling the sky. Maya stood by the window of the community center, a coffee cup in hand. Her eyes scanning the street like a sentinel. The media storm ignited by her televised exposure of Bryce Kendall hadn't died down. It had intensified. Her inbox overflowed with threats and praise alike. But the community had drawn closer around her. Like steel tightening under pressure. Jelen stepped into the room quietly. "You should rest," he said gently. "It's been non-stop for days." Maya gave him a tired smile. "Rest is a luxury right now. I need to protect what we've built." She turned and tapped on her tablet. "I've scheduled a press conference for tomorrow morning. We're taking this all the way." Jelen hesitated before asking, "Have you thought about security? What Bryce might do next?" Maya paused, her gaze hardening. "I've thought about everything, and I'm not afraid of men like Bryce Kendall anymore." That afternoon, as Maya walked through the center's hallway, she was met with hushed voices and anxious eyes. One of the volunteers, Mara, pulled her aside. "There's a car parked outside, black SUV, no plates." Maya nodded. "Stay inside. Lock the back gate. I'll handle it." She stepped out the front doors, heart steady, shoulders squared. The SUV idled like a quiet threat. The windows were tinted black. She stood in front of it, arms crossed. A few tense seconds passed before the window lowered just enough to reveal a man in a suit. She recognized Bryce's head of security. "Message from Mr. Kendall," he said, expression unreadable. "Back off or it won't just be your foundation under fire." "Tell him I said this, cowards don't get to rewrite justice," Maya answered. The window rose. The SUV sped off. That night, a brick was thrown through the center's front window. Maya was in her office. The sound cracked the silence like a gunshot. She rushed out to see shattered glass and a spray-painted message on the wall. "Traitor." Police arrived quickly, but she declined to press charges. "No suspects, just intimidation tactics." Jelen patched the window himself while Maya stood in the cold wind. The weight of what was happening sinking deeper. Still, she didn't back down. The next morning, Maya arrived at City Hall with her team for the press conference. Reporters crowded the steps, microphones outstretched like hungry mouths. She stepped up to the podium, calm and unshaken. Good morning, she began. My name is Maya Williams. I am not a politician. I'm not wealthy. I'm not powerful in the traditional sense, but I have something men like Bryce Kendall fear: community and truth. She paused. What I revealed this week is not just about me. It's about the systems that allow people like him to operate in the dark. The threats I've received prove how close we are to something real, and I will not stop. The crowd erupted into applause, but in the back, Bryce stood with arms folded, face expressionless. Maya's eyes met his. She didn't flinch. Later that day, Maya met with a group of civil rights lawyers who offered pro bono legal support to sue Kendall for defamation and harassment. We can win, said one attorney, a woman in her 50s named Letitia, but you'll be dragged through court for years. Maya looked her in the eye. If I back down, it tells every kid watching that truth doesn't matter, that bullies win. Letitia nodded. Then let's fight. Meanwhile, Bryce met in secret with members of the city's elite. He pitched his narrative of being falsely accused, painted himself as a victim of reverse racism. She's destabilizing the economy, he argued to a boardroom full of old men in suits. We need to shut her down. But what he didn't expect was resistance. One of the members, a soft-spoken older gentleman, interrupted. I watched her interview. She was calm, clear, compelling. Maybe this isn't the battle we should be fighting. Bryce's face flushed. He realized too late that his grip on power was weakening. Back at the center, Maya gathered the children in the reading room, a weekly tradition that hadn't faltered despite the chaos. She sat in her usual spot, a worn-out armchair with faded green cushions. Today, she said, we read about brave choices. The kids leaned in, quiet and wide-eyed. Outside, the sun broke through heavy clouds, casting golden light through the cracked window. Simone watched from the doorway, tears in her eyes. When the story ended, Maya closed the book and looked at the children. You have a voice, she said softly. Even when people try to silence you. Never forget that. That night, Maya sat with Jalan under a sky freckled with stars. You think it's working? He asked. She leaned against him. Change doesn't come like thunder. It's quiet, slow, but it's here. Jalan smiled. You know, if your mom could see you now, Maya closed her eyes. She'd tell me to stay strong, just like she did every day of her life. And in a small, quiet office across the city, Bryce sat alone, staring at a news article headlined, Community Rises. Maya Williams inspires a movement. His empire wasn't crumbling, but it was cracking. And he knew the woman he had underestimated would be the reason why. The courtroom was packed. Rows of press, local residents, activists, and curious onlookers filled every bench. Maya sat at the front beside Letitia, the civil rights attorney who had become both legal counsel and moral ally. Across the aisle, Bryce Kendall exuded forced calm, surrounded by high-priced lawyers in tailored suits. His empire was visibly cracking, and the mask he wore was thinning. The judge entered, and silence fell like a curtain. The trial for defamation, targeted harassment, and civil rights violations had reached its final day. Maya had testified the previous morning. Her words, raw and unwavering, had electrified the room. This isn't about me. It's about the next black woman who's told to stay quiet, about the children who think their lives won't matter. We all deserve better. Now, as closing statements began, Letitia rose with calm fire in her voice. Ladies and gentlemen, my client did not seek fame, did not seek vengeance. She sought truth. She stood alone until the community stood with her. That is the story of America at its best. She sat. A quiet murmur rippled. Bryce's lead attorney stood, voice slick, dismissing Maya's claims as emotional exaggeration and painting Bryce as the real victim. But the jury watched Bryce, not his lawyer, and Bryce's expression betrayed the contempt that had always bubbled under the surface. When the jury returned hours later, the entire courtroom leaned forward. On the charge of defamation, we find the defendant liable. On the charge of harassment and incitement, liable. On the charge of civil rights interference, liable. Gasps and soft cheers erupted before the judge struck his gavel. Maya's eyes welled, but her face remained composed. Justice had not been swift. It had not been painless, but it had arrived. Outside the courthouse, a sea of supporters had gathered, holding candles in daylight. Reporters surged toward Maya, but she stepped past them toward the children who stood in the front row holding signs. "Thank you, Maya." "And truth is power," she knelt beside them. "This victory belongs to you," she said softly. "Never let anyone steal your voice." A week later, a ceremony was held in the very neighborhood where Maya had once been spit on, screamed at, and ignored. Now, the city council, under new leadership, unveiled the Maya Williams Center for Justice and Literacy, funded in part by restitution from the lawsuit against Bryce. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, but the pride outweighed the irony. Jalin stood beside Maya, his arm lightly resting on her shoulder as she accepted a plaque from Mayor Banks. "You didn't just fight for truth," Banks said. "You reminded us what it means to lead with integrity." As the crowd dispersed, an older woman with silver braids approached Maya quietly. "I knew your mother," she said with a small smile. "She was proud of who she was, but she'd be prouder of who you've become." Maya's throat tightened. She hugged the woman. No words needed. That evening, as golden dusk settled over the city, Maya returned to the modest apartment she still shared with Jalin. Despite offers of book deals, national interviews, and even a political candidacy, she had declined them all for now. "The kids still need stories," she told him as they prepared dinner together. "And someone's got to fix the leaky sink in the back of the center." Jalin grinned. "World's most famous wrench-wielding hero." She laughed, setting 2 plates down. "I'll take that over Senator any day." Later, the two sat on the rooftop, the city stretching around them like a quiet witness. Maya looked at the stars. "You know what scares me?" she said. "What?" Jalin asked. "That people will forget. That they'll move on." Jalin was silent for a beat. "Then remind them again and again. With every book you read, every hand you hold, every kid you protect." Maya nodded slowly. "We keep the light, don't we?" He looked at her. "Always." Down below, in the still-lit windows of the new center, a little girl named Nia flipped through a book about Harriet Tubman. On the wall beside her, a mural glowed under soft lighting. Maya's face surrounded by symbols of unity, courage, and justice. And beneath it the words, "She taught us that silence was never safety, and that one voice, steady and true, could move mountains." The mural would stand long after cameras left, long after headlines faded. But Maya's legacy was never meant for fame. It was carved in the lives she touched, the truth she unearthed, and the fire she never let die. Justice, she knew now, didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered. But even a whisper, when carried by enough hearts, could shake the world. This story teaches us that true strength comes from standing up for what is right. Even when you are alone, Maya Williams, with no power or wealth, chose truth over fear and became a voice for the voiceless. Justice is not always fast or loud. Sometimes it starts with small, quiet acts of courage. But when you stay true, others will follow, and change will come. One voice can make a difference. One brave heart can inspire a movement. Brought to you by BUP Stories.